After a sustained period of prayer in 2004, I remembered a promise that I made some 32 years earlier, that I would return to India if God gave me the grace to do so. When making a pathfinding trip to India at the end of 2004, the students of the Presbyterian Theological Seminary put a Macedonian call before me that I should return to India, but join with them in places that they were preparing to minister the gospel all across India. Upon reporting to the session of the elders at my home church, St John's Presbyterian Church, Annerley in Brisbane, they did an extraordinary thing. Instead of calling for a steering committee to organise such a proposal, they called for a regular Saturday morning prayer meeting that would pray for the revival of our churches in Australia and our engagement with like-minded churches on the Indian subcontinent. As a Presbyterian minister, when the church sets up a steering committee, it is usually the death of the proposal. But when they set up a prayer meeting, anything can happen. Anne and I agreed to set out on a series of pathfinding trips to India and visit the family of Reformed and Presbyterian churches in India during my very generous Christmas school holiday period when I was working as a teacher at the Brisbane Boys College. Since Indian independence, the modern missionary movement saw Western missionaries removed from India, but Indian churches have grown rapidly under Indian leadership. Although these churches are very diverse, we found a real sense of unity amongst the Reformed and Presbyterian family of churches that were represented by 11 Presbyterian and Reformed denominations across India. These churches were represented in the Reformed and Presbyterian Fellowship of India. Reverend Hirilal and Mrs. Lakshmi Solanki somehow represent this dynamic and faithful group of churches who began a grassroots church planting ministry called the Bible Presbyterian Churches in Delhi. There are 11 local congregations, and 4 of these congregations are now self-supporting, self-governing, and self-propagating. A circuit of ministry was being developed where we would visit on a regular basis our fellowship of churches, where we would give pastoral and theological input that was consistent with the historic confessions of Presbyterian and Reformed churches. Sometimes these topics were extremely controversial, but it was easier for these topics to be covered by someone from outside. Our work extended to Nepal, where the church has grown rapidly in the past 10 to 20 years. Our particular focus has been with the Nepal Campus Church, under the leadership of Pastor Umar Sharma and his wife Santosh. Umar came to know the Lord while he was teaching at the Nepal University and went to the London Theological Seminary to train as a preacher and pastor. They have just celebrated their 4th anniversary since they began as a church-planting church. Another strategic area for the work of IRFA is the Darjeeling Hills district, where the older denomination called the United Churches of North India Himalayan Council. These mountain areas have witnessed very large church growth in the last 10 years or so. The Darjeeling Hills Bible School is situated in Mirik, where theological students are trained for the Nepali-speaking regions of India, including Nepal, Darjeeling Hills, Sikkim, Bhutan. This Bible school is small but very effective and clearly reformed and evangelical in their teaching. Reverend Kushal Rai and Reverend Kingchad Namchu are typical of these regions, who are graduates from the Presbyterian Theological Seminary in Dehradun and are now lecturing at the Darjeeling Hills Bible School. Kushal also did his master's degrees through the Puritan and Reformed Seminary in Grand Rapids, USA. Kingchad is doing the same thing starting next year. Reverend Dr. Kamal Rai is the principal at the Darjeeling Hills Bible School. Reverend Sudan and Gita Lepcha of the Siliguri UCNI are now pastoring a large church in Siliguri, and is typically a graduate from the Presbyterian Theological Seminary in Dehradun. Then there is Reverend Dr. Pallab Lima, who is beginning new churches in Calcutta, where there has been a resistance to the gospel ever since the days of William Carey. But Pallab is now seeing new converts from amongst the West Bengali people. In South India, in the state of Andhra Pradesh, there is a new denomination developing called the Covenant Reformed Assemblies in an area called Ramachandrapuram. Pastor Moses and his wife Hepzibah have been laboring in village ministry for more than 17 years and are beginning to see fruit for their labor. In these southern states, it is rare to have properly formed elderships, but Pastor Moses has built these churches with properly functioning elderships. These churches are strongly evangelical and are reaching out into the heartland of South Indian villages, most of which are extremely poor. From a very practical position, it is very difficult for Anne to travel with me on this itinerant work, and could be quite dangerous for Western women. But she is able to accompany me for a couple of weeks every few years, and meet the women that we minister to through this ministry of Urfa. Please continue to pray for us in this work, as in the last 2 years my health has deteriorated considerably, but is sustained by the grace of God.